You checked your bank account this morning. You know you did. And for a second, just a second, you held your breath before the number loaded. That's not normal. That's not what doing well feels like. That little flinch before the screen refreshes, that's your body keeping score. Even when your brain has convinced itself everything is fine, you're 40 or close enough. You have a career, you have a life that looks assembled, and yet there's this persistent low grade anxiety about money that never fully goes away. Not because you're irresponsible, not because you didn't try, but because there are at least 8 things operating in your financial life right now, silently, systematically, that nobody ever named for you. A 2024 bank rate survey found that 59% of Americans say they're uncomfortable with their level of emergency savings. But here's the part that doesn't make the headline. The discomfort is highest among people in their late 30s and 40s, people who are, by every external measure, supposed to have it together by now. This isn't a low income problem. This is a structural problem, and it's eating people alive at exactly the moment in life when wealth should be accelerating. Here's the first one. You're paying someone to lose you money, not a scammer. You're fund manager. If your 401k is sitting in actively managed mutual funds, which is where most employer plans default, you're probably paying somewhere between 0.5% and 1.5% in annual expense ratios. That sounds tiny. It is not tiny. On a $200,000 portfolio, a 1% annual fee cost you $2,000 this year. But compounded over 20 years, that same fee structure eats somewhere in the range of $60,000 to $100,000 in returns you never see because the money was never yours to begin with. It was quietly redirected. Fidelity's index funds charge 0.015%. Vanguard's are similar. The difference between a 1% expense ratio and a 0.015% one compounded over a career is not a rounding error. It's a car. It's a year of college. Log into your 401k today. Look at the expense ratios on every fund you hold. Move anything above 0.2% into an index equivalent and never think about it again. The second thing, nobody told you, your salary is a negotiation, not a reward. Most people get raises the way they get approval, by waiting to be offered something and then accepting it. The data on this is devastating. According to multiple compensation studies, employees who switch jobs earn on average 10% to 15% more than those who stay and receive standard annual raises. Annual raises at most companies average 3% to 4%. Inflation in 2025 is running near that same number, which means if you haven't changed jobs in 3 years, and you haven't aggressively negotiated, you have not had a real raise. You've had a raise that kept pace with prices, which is the financial equivalent of standing still while calling it progress. The people your age who are actually pulling ahead aren't necessarily smarter. They move, they ask, they counter. They know that loyalty to an employer is not reciprocal, and they price themselves accordingly. Third, you are almost certainly underinsured on the one thing that would actually destroy you. Not your car, not your house, you. If you became disabled tomorrow and couldn't work for a year or 5, what happens? Most people have some short-term disability through their employer. Fewer have long-term disability coverage that would replace a meaningful percentage of their income. The Social Security Administration estimates that more than 1 in 4 20-year-olds will experience a disability before retirement age. You're 40, you're not 20. The math on this isn't in your favor, and disability insurance costs are actually much lower than people assume. Often $50 to $150 a month for solid coverage, depending on your income and occupation. What's not cheap is 6 months into a medical crisis, realizing your income evaporated and your savings account is a countdown clock. If you don't have long term disability coverage, you don't have a financial plan. You have a financial bet. The fourth thing is one that makes people defensive, so I'll say it plainly. You have a financial advisor you trust who is not legally required to act in your best interest. Most financial professionals in the United States operate under a suitability standard. That means they can recommend products that are suitable for you, even if they make more money off those products. And there's a better option sitting right next to them. Fiduciaries, advisors legally required to prioritize your interests, are different, and they're a minority. If you don't know whether your advisor is a fiduciary, ask. If they hedge the answer, that is the answer. Paying 1% in advisory fees on a $300,000 portfolio is $3,000 a year. Over 20 years at 8% compounded, that's tens of thousands of dollars that went to your advisor instead of your retirement. A fee only fiduciary advisor or a well constructed 3-fund portfolio you manage yourself will almost always outperform the alternative over time. Not because your advisor is bad at their job, because the fee structure is a headwind no one talks about at your annual review. Fifth, and this one is genuinely brutal for 2-income households, you build a life that requires both incomes to survive, not to thrive, to survive. 2 incomes, 1 mortgage payment sized for 2 incomes, 2 car payments, the childcare, the subscriptions, the lifestyle. And somewhere in there, neither income has real slack, which means if one disappears, a layoff, an illness, a career change that takes 18 months to pay off, you're not adjusting. You're in crisis. The Federal Reserve's 2024 report on household economic well-being found that nearly 40% of adults couldn't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing. Among dual-income households with children, the financial fragility is often hidden behind a high combined income that leaves almost nothing liquid. The move here is treating one income as optional. Can you cover your fixed expenses on one salary? If not, you don't have a dual income advantage, you have a dual income dependency. And those are very different things. The sixth thing is about taxes. And the reason it's on this list is that most people in their 30s and 40s still think about taxes the way they did at 24, as something that happens to them at the end of the year, not as something they can shape. If you have access to a health savings account and you're not maxing it, $4,300 for an individual, $8,550 for a family in 2026, you're leaving a triple tax advantage sitting on the table. Contributions are pre-tax, growth is tax-free, withdrawals for medical expenses are tax-free. No other account in the U.S. tax code does all three. After 65, you can withdraw for any reason, and it functions like a traditional IRA. People treat HS as like flex spending accounts and spend the money on contact lenses. The play is to invest it, pay medical expenses out of pocket when you can, and let the account compound for 25 years. Similarly, if you're not using a backdoor Roth strategy, if you're above the income threshold, not harvesting tax losses in your brokerage account, and not running even the simplest projections on Roth versus traditional contributions, you're making decisions that will cost you real money in retirement without ever realizing a single wrong choice was made. Tax optimization is not complicated, it's just boring. And boring things don't get attention until the damage is already done. 7. You treat your home equity like a savings account, and that is a liquidity trap waiting to close around you. Housing in most US markets has appreciated significantly. That's great on paper, but paper gains don't pay for a job loss. They don't cover a medical emergency. You cannot eat your home equity. HELOC activity has increased sharply in recent years as homeowners tap their equity to cover consumption spending, renovations that are really lifestyle upgrades, debt consolidation that doesn't address the spending pattern, and expenses that should have come from income. The home becomes a piggy bank, and the logic feels sound. You're borrowing against an asset you own at a lower rate than a credit card. What it actually is, converting a fixed payment mortgage position into a variable rate interest accruing liability that now has your house as collateral, taken out to fund something that didn't build any additional wealth. Home equity is a one-way vault. The money goes in great, the money comes out expensive and then complicated. Use it like the emergency only last resort tool it should be, not as a second income. The eighth thing, and this is the one that will feel like an insult, but is actually the most important, is that you don't actually know your numbers. Not really. You know roughly what you make, you know roughly what you spend, you probably know your mortgage payment and your car payment and what your 401k balance was the last time you bothered to check. But do you know your net worth right now? Within $5,000? Do you know your actual savings rate, not what you intend to save, but the percentage of your income that actually accumulated last month? Do you know your retirement gap, how much you need, how much you have, and what monthly contribution closes that distance? Most people in their 40s are flying by feel in a plane that requires instruments. The feel is optimistic because the alternative is confronting something uncomfortable. But flying by feel at 40,000 feet is how planes go down. It only takes one afternoon. Pull your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements, add up what actually left, calculate what you actually saved, compare it to what you told yourself you were doing. The gap between the story and the math is where the problem lives. And you cannot fix something you've never actually measured. Now, here's why this is worse than it looks on its own. These 8 things don't sit in separate boxes, they connect. You don't know your numbers, so you don't realize how exposed you are on a single income. You don't realize how exposed you are, so you never push for the salary increase that would give you breathing room. Without breathing room, you can't max the HSA or think clearly about the fee structure in your 401k. The low retirement balance creates background anxiety, so you tap the HELOC to remodel the kitchen because the house at least feels like progress. The remodel doesn't show up in your net worth. And because you trust your advisor, who is not a fiduciary, nobody is telling you any of this. They're telling you that you're doing great. You're a valued client. See you next year. This is not bad luck. It's a system, and the system has a very clear preference for your passivity. The people who escape it aren't doing anything heroic. They're just paying attention to different things. They know their actual numbers. They price their labor correctly. They have coverage for the catastrophe they don't want to think about. They've checked whether their advisor works for them or for a commission. They've left enough slack in the budget that one income going away doesn't equal disaster. They understand what they're giving the government and what they can legally keep. And they treat their home like a place they live, not a brokerage account with a front door. You still have time, but time is the one thing that doesn't wait for you to feel ready. The math on compound growth is ruthless in both directions. It rewards starting now, and it punishes every year you spend telling yourself you'll sort it out when things settle down. Things don't settle down. You know that already. That's why you flinched at the bank balance this morning. Pull up your accounts, not tomorrow, right now.